Shortly after the Miami Hurricanes lost to North Carolina, a former Hurricanes player tweeted this: "At some point, you can't continue to place the blame on the jockeys. The blame has to finally shift and be placed on the horses." Now, in this equation, the jockeys are coaches and the horses are players. So let's talk to the guy who tweeted it.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. 3-game losing streak. We're hoping that comes to an end this Saturday when Miami takes on Virginia Tech at 12:30. On the road in Blacksburg. But I want to bring on a man who's certainly been to Blacksburg before, and he knows what it means to be a part of a winning locker room. He arrived at Miami to play offensive tackle in 2001. That was a pretty good year as far as I can remember. Rashad Butler joins us. Rashad, what's going on?
I'm doing well. No complaints at all.
And Rashad, of course, a great former Cane player. I mean, he's still a Cane. Once a Cane, always a Cane, but a great former player. And he's a former post-game co-host of mine. And you can imagine post-game conversations for Canes football in recent years have been pretty heated. And, Rashad has always had the perspective of, you do have to put at least some blame on players when things go wrong instead of putting all the blame on the coaches. So you had that tweet, Rashad, that I read in the opening. At some point, you can't continue to place the blame on the jockeys. The blame has to finally shift and be placed onto the horses, right? So, okay, based on what you've seen through 5 games, specifically during this 3-game losing streak, how much of the spotlight do you put on players versus coaching, and how has that all played out for you?
Well, the reason I made that tweet after Saturday's game was because I didn't want fans to continue to place the blame on the jockeys, or in this case, the coaches, because for so long, and as you know, doing the post game with you in the past, the blame has always been placed on the coaches, especially during the Manny Diaz era. And I'm not saying that blame shouldn't be placed on the coaches, but looking at the losses that Miami had, there has been a lot of mental errors, especially the past couple of games in the secondary with the defense. And I'm not trying to say that the offense hasn't made mental errors, because they have as well. But for me, as a former player in college and in the NFL, when I see mental errors occurring, that's not necessarily coaching. That's more so on the players not remembering what they were taught or their specific assignment on that specific play call. And the blame has to be placed on the players. And I think the current players now, need to do a better job of understanding the new system, whether they like it or not, and whether fans like it or not. Whether it's offensively with Josh Gaddis, if I'm not mistaken, and defensively with Kevin Steele, if I'm not mistaken. Right now, whether, like I said, the players or the fans, you may not like the scheme, but if a play is called for the players, they have to go out and they have to execute the play that is called. And, specifically going to the Middle Tennessee game, I mean, there was just too many breakdowns in the secondary. And I know you may have the fans that want to play devil advocate and want to say, well, maybe the scheme is too tough. Listen, if the scheme is too tough, then that's up for the players to relay that to the coaches. I mean, I understand these are still kids and they're in college, but if you're not grasping something the way you need to grasp it in order to put your best foot forward, you need to speak up. So I just think in this instant, as of right now, I think the majority of the blame has to be placed on the players. They just have to do a better job of understanding their system, whether it's on offense or defense, and they have to execute that.
And it's always complicated when a new staff comes in and they make pretty radical changes on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball. And so, like, on the one hand, if you look at it like a long-term project, obviously these coaches are going to be looking for recruits, right? 2023, 2024 and beyond that really fit the systems that they employ. And maybe some of the current players don't necessarily fit that. But then obviously, the coaches need to adapt to the players, Rashad, and they need to find plays that the players are comfortable with, but they also don't want to sacrifice the long-term transition just to say, you know what, we'll just try to run everything that the coaches ran last year. So the players do have to learn that. The coaches have to teach it to them. So in your experience, just like how difficult can it be for a player to learn a new system and to make that transition when they were playing a different way for the past few years?
For me, and I want to make sure I say this correctly, I think the most difficult part is from a technical standpoint, as far as your technique. I've never had any problems when it comes to the uh, intelligence of the game, as far as understanding any type of system, because I'm the one to ask a lot of questions if I'm not, I guess, understanding what the coaches, or my coach is trying to teach me. So for me, it's always been, I think, when it comes to a new system, has just been the technique, because every system and every coach within that system has specific techniques that they like to teach that you may not have been, I guess, accustomed to in the previous system. But as far as understanding the plays, that shouldn't be a problem, because again, I mean, every system is going to bring forth a new set of, I guess, equations and problems that you as a football player or as an athlete, you have to figure out. And that's your job to do so.
We're joined here by former Miami Hurricanes offensive tackle Rashad Butler. And Rashad, of course, he was on the team the last time Miami was a national championship caliber team. And I was a huge fan, of course, in those days. I've been a Canes fan all my life. And so, yeah, listen, the last 20 years or so, there have been some ups and downs, but the last 20 years have been difficult for all of us. And something that I see a lot, Rashad, and I love it. Like, people leave us comments on the show, they leave us tweets at Locked On Canes and keep them coming. But a lot of people will tell me, like, Donno, I have no more patience. Like, I've run out of patience. It's been a 20-year rebuild. I don't want to hear about rebuild happening this year when it's been happening for the last 20 years. But my big thing is, Rashad, it's like, I know it's painful, and I've been through the last 20 years the same way every Canes fan has, but I can't blame all of the last 20 years on coaches that have been here for 8 or 9 months. Like, it's not fair to put all of that on Cristobal as some people are trying to do. And I wanted to get your experience, because when you were at Miami in the early 2000s, Mario Cristobal was on the staff then. He was coaching the tight ends, if I'm not mistaken, at the time that you were
Correct.
there. So, he wasn't coaching your position group, but you did interact with him a lot. What were your impressions of Cristobal as a coach?
I loved him as a coach. I've always gravitated to coaches that are very intense, but coaches that are great teachers as well. I've always said, I don't mind you being intense, and I don't mind you yelling at me, but as long as you're able to be respectful along that line, at the same time, if you're a great teacher. I've always had tough coaches. Art Kehoe has been a tough coach, but a great teacher. I mean, even when I got to the NFL, the legendary and the late great Alex Gibbs. I mean, he was a intense, fiery yeller as an offensive line coach, but one of the most intellectual coaches I've ever had, as far as understanding the zone scheme and just teaching it at a doctorate level. So I've been drawn to very intense guys, and Mario's a very intense guy, but at the same time, Mario is an outstanding teacher. I mean, I used to just sit back and just look at the way he coached, guys like Greg Olson when Greg played tight end, even Buck Ortega, his stint at tight end, and, just him converting from, quarterback, that he came in as to tight end. So Mario, like I said, again, not to beat a dead horse, is a very intense guy, but he's a great teacher. And to address what you talked about before you addressed Mario, when it comes to rebuilding, I think if fans want to blame anybody, they have to blame, the previous athletic directors that
Right.
Miami had with Paul D and Blake James, because again, it came down to them just not choosing the right coaches. I mean, it's just like in the NFL. When you're a GM, you have to choose the right guys in the draft. And if you don't, then of course, it's going to hurt you. And then that's going to be your resume. And, I understand fans are tired of rebuilding, and I'm tired of it as well, too. But I just think that you have to give the guy, that you choose, and hopefully it's the right guy. And this time I truly do think it's the right guy. And I know fans may not want to hear that, but you have to give that guy at least 3 or 4 years, because, he has to be able to bring in, his horses, his guys. And hopefully he's able to recruit, the right horses and so forth. And right now, again, and this is, not a knock on Manny Diaz, but, I think Mario Cristobal is having to work with, guys that aren't his guys. I mean, guys that are Mark Richt and Manny Diaz guys. And for fans, just allow Mario at least to bring in his guys and have at least 2 years with his guys. So I know fans don't want to hear this, but I think the telling year for me is going to have to be 2024, because I think by that time he will have his guys, and he will have had his guys for at least 2 years and so forth. So I know it's a long way out, but I'm really looking forward to 2024 really being the year where this program can finally turn the corner under Mario Cristobal. And I say that because I truly believe that Mario Cristobal is the guy for the job, from what I've seen in the past, as far as having him as a coach and, working with him alongside Art Keough, that was our offensive line coach.
I love to hear that, even if it requires at least 2 more years of patience. I love to hear it. And folks, we have so much more to talk about with Rashad Butler. Played offensive tackle early 2000s at the University of Miami. I've got to pick his brain on the red zone, because every time Miami gets inside that 20, it's like everything just stops working, and it's frustrating to watch as a fan. So we're going to get to that right after we talk about it. And this is unlike the red zone. This puts a smile on my face. Upside, guys, from cringing at the pump to getting an eye-popping check at your favorite restaurant. Inflation is hitting us all where it hurts, and it really hurts. This is why I started using Upside, and I've been using Upside since 2020. It's an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out, because with every purchase, I am earning cash back thanks to Upside. I use it every time I get gas, and I use it at select restaurants. It's so easy to sign up, download the app, and they're putting cash back right in your pocket, guys. It's a no-brainer. To get started, you download the free Upside app, use my promo code LOCKED. That's LOCKAD. Sorry, LOCKED. Ooh, if I could spell, that'd be great. Use LOCKED, the promo code LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You check in at the business, and it runs you through step-by-step on the app. Pay as usual with a credit card or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. So download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCKED. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Talking to former Miami Hurricanes offensive tackle Rashad Butler. We could use some push from people like you in the red zone, Rashad. The Miami Hurricanes are 78th nationally in touchdown red zone percentage. And that even includes the Bethune-Cookman game, which was obviously a lot easier than the other games they played. 78th in the country. That's bottom half in the nation, scoring touchdowns in the red zone. From your point of view, Rashad, Miami, when they get inside the 20, especially when they get inside the 5, like the closer they get to the end zone, the harder it seems to be for Miami to score. What are they lacking there?
So for me, it comes down to a few things. First and foremost, what I was always taught by great offensive coaches that I've had through college and through my time in the NFL is that it's a mentality, first and foremost, especially once you get inside the 10. Once you get goal to go, it's a mentality. But just in general, it comes down to execution from the player standpoint and from the coach's standpoint. It comes down to understanding who are your creators as far as mismatches and putting them in the best possible situation to, I guess, exploit the defense when it comes to mismatches. So I think it's a combination between Gaddis and his players as far as him understanding, okay, who are my mismatch creators? And I understand that Restrepo was pretty much the number one guy that was a mismatch creator. But, again, injuries happen in football, and it's up to Gaddis, excuse me, to figure out, okay, I don't have him, so who can I use next? And I don't really understand why Will Mallory hasn't been used more because, he's a big body guy. And I think whenever you have a big body guy down in the red zone, you have to put him in situations that can, I guess, get him against smaller safeties or, even smaller cornerbacks and so forth. But again, I just think from a coaching standpoint, it comes down to understanding your guys and understanding, what they create as far as mismatches in comparison to the defense. And then it just comes down to the players executing and having a mentality that, like, listen, when we get down here, it is not going to be any 3 points. It is going to be 6 points on the scoreboard.
And I wanted to bring up this quote from Josh Gaddis, who Rashad may have noticed. He's not the most popular guy in town right now, and I share some of that frustration. I do think the play calling can be better at times. I put blame on players and coaches. I don't usually just put all the blame on one or the other. But one of the things that I noticed was, like, after the Middle Tennessee game, we talk to the coaches every week. Cristobal speaks, Kevin Steele speaks, and Josh Gaddis, they speak every Monday. And after the Middle Tennessee game, Mario Cristobal in his press conference specifically took blame. Like, he put blame on himself for the team's struggles. Kevin Steele, the defensive coordinator, specifically said, put it on me. That's on me. Whereas Josh Gaddis didn't. Like, when he spoke, he didn't ever specifically put any blame on himself. That was 2 weeks ago. Just for the record, like, because, to be fair, because a lot of people pointed that out. Hey, this is the one coach that had no accountability. He did say on Monday when I spoke to Coach Gaddis, I take full responsibility, he said, of the red zone struggles. That's 3 games in a row where we've gotten stopped at the goal line. That's not who we are, and that can't be who we are. We've got to develop an identity and mindset that once we're on the goal line, we can't be denied. So he did say, for what those words are worth, he did take responsibility for it. And again, and also, Rashad, something over the last couple of weeks, and this goes, I think, a lot back to the effort from the offensive line on down to the running backs. The running game has kind of disappeared, and some of it is situational, right? Because they've been playing from behind, needing to throw for chunk yards, but still, the running game's been sputtering. What have you identified from that standpoint?
Just the mentality. Again, when you get down there, especially goal-to-go situations, the 10 going in, it just comes down to the guys you have up front. And if a running play is called, saying to yourself, like, listen, we are getting at least 4 yards or more, and then once we get within the 5, we are punching it in. So I don't like to place a lot of the blame on coaching when it comes down to problems in the red zone. And like I said, yes, some blame has to be placed on coaching because, the play caller has to understand, who are his guys that can create the best mismatches against the defense that they're going up against. But at the same time, the players have to execute, and the players have to do a better job of not making any mental errors down there and really just punching the ball in. And again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but it really is a mentality down there, because I think the great teams, whether you see it in college or in the NFL, that are able to score in the red zone, they just have that mentality that, listen, once we get within the 20 or the 10-yard line, we are not leaving unless we have 6 points on the board. And more times than none, they happen to put 6 points on the board.
That's well said. When we come back, I want to talk about where Miami goes from here, okay? Because it is a 2-3 start, and it's all ACC the rest of the way. The Canes are behind the 8 ball now in the ACC and in the Coastal at 0-1. What happens from this point forward? I want to talk about, guys, this is really cool. Our partners at Nissan. I love the fact that Nissan is with us now on Locked On. They've worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network called Thrilling Moments. We highlight the most exciting play from the Canes weekend game or throughout the history of our alma mater. This week's thrilling moment for the Canes is, and I know it was a loss last week, but you guys know what a big Colby Young fan I am. And in Miami's comeback attempt against North Carolina, Tyler Van Dyke connected with transfer wide receiver Colby Young, big number 88, on a 17-yard touchdown pass. That got the Canes within 3 points with 2:20 left on the clock. It gave Miami a chance after a 7-play, 63-yard scoring drive. And by the way, on that 63-yard drive, Colby Young, including the touchdown, caught 3 balls for 43 yards. He made the case for more playing time in the future. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. Alex Donno alongside former Miami Hurricanes offensive tackle Rashad Butler. So, Rashad, obviously Miami's down bad right now. 3-game losing streak. 2-3 start to the year. You're 0-1 in the conference, so your statistical odds of winning the Coastal are dropping severely after losing to North Carolina. But I do remind people that, and obviously I'm not even saying last year was a good year, because it wasn't, but I will remind people Miami was 2-4 last year before winning 5 of their final 6 games. They won on a 3-game winning streak after a 2-4 start. So I don't necessarily think who Miami has been the past 3 Saturdays, or 3 out of the past 4 Saturdays, is who they're going to be for the rest of the season. Do you see signs of hope, Rashad? Because, for as bad as Miami was at times against North Carolina, they were 2 or 3 plays away from winning that football game. Do you think the Hurricanes can go on a run from this point forward?
I do. And I say that because I like to watch how players are able to bounce back, because I'm big on resiliency. I think that is something you need, just in life as a human being, in order to be successful, or to give your chance, to give yourself, a chance at being successful. And I want to see how Tyler Van Dyke was going to bounce back, because as we all know, in football, the quarterback is the most important position as far as, his mentality, how he responds to adversity, and basically how he performs, whether it's having success or not having success. And we all know the previous game before Saturday's game, he was pulled, and he was facing a lot of adversity and so forth, because the guy he was pulled for came in and played very, very well. But, this past Saturday, he performed well. He really did. And I was very happy to see that. And, from looking at that and being able to observe that resilience, it gave me confidence to say, okay, you know what? I think Tyler now really understands, okay, I have to play this way each and every week in order to give my team a chance at being successful. And also, I looked at it as, okay, maybe he's finally turning the corner in understanding this offense the way he needs to understand this offense, and also understanding, okay, I may not have my main guy in Restrepo, but now I have to become accustomed to other guys. And when it comes to the defense, listen, I'm not gonna lie. You know me, I always keep it 100 or honest. Is I'm still worried about the secondary
Hmm.
because I just think that there's been too many mental lapses on a week by week basis. And I understand, like, listen, players are going to make mistakes because I've been a player and I've made mistakes. But when the same mistakes keep happening, that's worrisome to me. So, I don't know how they can get that corrected. Again, I'm not in those meetings, whether it's secondary meetings, and defensive meetings, but that's the one, I guess, position group on this team that still worries me. But as far as the defensive line, I think they've been doing a good job. I mean, listen, people people are hard on the linebackers, and I understand,
Yeah.
but at the same time, linebacker is a very, very tough position. And I just think right now, Miami they have guys that play well against the run, but guys that just struggle to coverage. And I don't know how much blame you can place on, Mario Cristobal and his coaching staff, because again, I mean, like I alluded to, or like I said earlier in the show, you know, these aren't guys that this coaching staff handpicked. So I mean, again, they're playing with players that aren't really theirs. And I know fans are going to say, well, it's their job to put those players in a advantageous situation. And I agree, but at times, when you're calling plays, you have to take chances.
Yeah.
And if it requires to leave a guy that may not be that fast one on one against a guy that may be faster than him, well, listen, you got to take that chance, especially if you're trying to get after the quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, I think defense, the strongest position is the defensive line, and they're going to have to really step their game up, because if they step their game up, they can take some pressure off of the linebackers and off of, I think, a secondary that is, quite frankly, the weakest link on this team. And like I said, that's the position that worries me the most, because there's just too many lapses on a week in and week out basis.
As an ACC veteran, you played in Blacksburg a couple times. Miami's going to play at Virginia Tech this Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Where does Lane Stadium rank in some of the tougher places to play in the conference?
Oh man, it's up there. I would say number one.
Whoa.
And no. I would say number one in my experience would be Clemson.
Oh, okay.
Definitely. I mean, I
I should have let
remember.
you finish your
But
sentence.
yeah. Listen, I remember going there in 2005, man, and in that overtime, well, in those overtime periods, because there was three, the ground was literally shaking, and I remember looking at Kyle Wright call the play in the huddle, and I couldn't hear a word that was coming out of his mouth, and I had to ask um, my my guard at the time what play was called, and I could barely hear him. So that right there ranks as number one. But I would say Virginia Tech is number two,
Ooh.
because it got loud more than a few times. I've been up there. I went up there in 2003. We lost in 2003, and it was loud that game.
Oh, that
Then
was the Kevin Everett drop,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean,
Oh,
he
wide
catches that.
open.
Listen,
Oh,
he catches that. That I think that just swings the game in our favor.
yeah.
And then I went back up there in 2005, and that was when we put it on them. But I just remember pregame and just the introductions; it was just deafening and so forth. So it's definitely loud, but for me, it's all about a mentality. It's understanding that, listen, we are going into a hostile environment, and we have to execute each and every play. But more importantly, we have to execute early to take the crowd out of the game, because if we let the crowd get into the game, then it's going to be very hard to take them out.
Well, this has been educational. He is a former NFL and Miami Hurricanes offensive tackle, Rashad Butler. You can follow him on Twitter at Rashad Jamal B, and he's a great follow, like during games. And sometimes depending on your perspective on things, Rashad's tweets might make you a little mad, but he doesn't care. He loves the discourse. He loves to chop it up with the fans, and so yeah, make sure you support Rashad. Rashad, thank you so much, my friend, and enjoy
No
the rest of
problem.
your week.
Thank you.
I love it. Guys, make sure you make Locked On ACC your second listen. I go on with Candace Cooper every Thursday. She's on every single day, breaking down the conference in 30 minutes or less. Locked On ACC. We will talk to you, friends, again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.